Welcome to App Stories, a weekly exploration of the world of apps. Today's show is brought to you by Linode Display, Linode, and Moo. I'm John Voorhees, and with me, as always, is Federico Viticci. Hey, Federico.
Hello, John. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I've been experimenting a whole bunch with some HomeKit stuff recently. I go through these periods where I do it, and then I stop for a while, and then I get back to it. It's just one of those things that I do periodically throughout the year. And I know that I think this time it was instigated by the Circle 2 camera getting, the secure video support in HomeKit. And I know you've been dabbling with that. Our friend Stephen Hackett
struggling with that. I've been struggling with
dabbling
that.
And struggling. They are sometimes the same thing when it comes to HomeKit. But I thought it would be a good time. I know we've talked about HomeKit here and there on this show and elsewhere, but it's one of those things that's constantly evolving, and I thought it'd be a good time just to kind of take stock of where we are in using HomeKit and other home automation type gear, but also the apps that we're using and automations and things like that, to just kind of give people, as they go into the holiday season and might be thinking about buying some of these things for friends and family, what we think kind of works and maybe what we don't think works so well too.
Mm-hmm. All right, so tell me, let me start by asking you a question, John. I want to know, what's the last accessory that you bought for HomeKit?
Okay, there are two, and they were both Logitech Circle 2 cameras because here's the thing. I've had canaries, and I had 2 canaries inside my house and 2 canaries outside my house. And of the 4, 2 of them failed within 9 months. And that didn't make me, 2 of them failed. One of them, and it wasn't just like, one of them was an outdoor one, and I chalked that one up initially to, the ravages of Chicago winter, and maybe it just couldn't quite handle it.
Minus 50 Celsius or something.
Right.
Year.
Exactly. So that one I chalked up to the weather. I gave him a little bit of a pass for that. But then one of the indoor ones just died on me for no apparent reason. It just stopped connecting to the network entirely. And they replaced them, which is great. But, they weren't super reliable, and they're not compatible with HomeKit, so I can't get to them through the Home app, and that means like automations and other things aren't available. So when I saw that the Circle 2 was getting the secure video, what is the term? What's the feature called? Secure home video, something like that.
HomeKit secure video.
HomeKit secure video. Once I saw it was getting that feature, I ordered one and set it up. And I know that you and Steven talked about this a little bit on Connected this past week. It's very rough right now. It's a beta, but I liked it enough because I like the hardware enough compared to the Canary, not just because it's new and it works, unlike a couple of the Canaries I had, but because the video resolution was better, the viewing angle was better, the streaming seemed better. All of those things were working better. So I picked up a second one because they went on sale on Amazon for another $20 or $30 off. And I've got one by my back door and one now installed over my front door. And I like them a lot, but I share your frustrations because I know I sent you guys a text of a screenshot of my notifications. I went out for lunch yesterday while I was listening to Connected. And as I was gone, I got 17 notifications of motion. Now, I don't have it set up so that the camera will show every, you can set up so it detects people, vehicles, and animals. I had it set up for people only and only when I wasn't home. And it's true, I wasn't home. I left the house, and it detected there weren't 17 people walking by my house. It detected all sorts of motion. And I know Steven on Connected had mentioned that his heater in his office turned on and it detected that as motion. Well, just imagine a camera looking out the window at bushes in the front yard and a tree and part of a street, like the cross street down the block from me where a lot of cars drive, and it just was going constantly. Now, I don't think I did anything in particular, but I took it and I installed it over the door and pointed it down so I can just kind of see when delivery men come and stuff like that. So it's not pointing out into the street anymore. It's still pointing at, bushes and things that move. But it magically stopped giving me lots of notifications because I was out of the house again later in the day and it didn't happen again. But I know that Sylvia has been having this problem with your upgrade of your Circle cameras, right?
Yeah. And since I talked about it on Connected, basically what happened was that HomeKit on Sylvia's iPhone on its own reset all the custom settings that I had assigned to the cameras this morning. So we're recording this the day after I talked about it on Connected. And the following day, she started getting notifications again for status changes. I had disabled those the day before.
Right.
We were home a few minutes ago, and she got an alert that she was not supposed to about a camera status change. So first of all, she was not supposed to get that because I had disabled that. Somehow the system re-enabled the setting for her. But get this is not even the best part of all. She got a notification saying that somebody had just arrived at home. Both of us were already at home, sitting in the kitchen, looking at each other.
Well,
so
yeah, I mean, that's the thing I was going to ask, is because status change is for things like when you leave the house or the camera goes offline or something like that. It's if you're both at home, I don't know what the status change would be.
Connected to Wi-Fi, both at home, all of our devices at home. And she got a notification that she was not supposed to get for something that was not happening at all. So I really hope that Apple can fix whatever is going on here relatively soon, because again, as I mentioned on Connected, we're talking about home security here. It's not, people depend on it. And especially when you're dealing with location and folks who are using cameras or lights or, appliances that maybe turn on when something like this happens.
Right.
Or home security systems, like you got to make sure that the system is rock solid. Yeah. And so far, we're having all kinds of issues with these notifications for HomeKit secure videos. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, the second camera I have not put on the beta firmware because I'm a little concerned that it'll just double my problems in terms of notifications. And like I said, I haven't had them since midday yesterday. So I think I'm just going to wait a little while and see what happens. I mean, it is kind of nice. The other thing the Circle has that the Canaries didn't have, at least the outdoor Canaries, is motion sensing. So I can do things like, I've been experimenting with some automations that we can get into automation a little later, but I've been experimenting with using those motion sensors. The motion sensors. The problem is, though, that when you're on the beta firmware, from what I can tell, the motion sensitivity is set incredibly high, so it just detects the slightest changes, whether it's the clouds changing in the sky or a leaf moving on a tree or I don't know, whatever. I mean, it's like Stephen Hackett said, that the heat coming on. I don't even know how it detects the heat coming on, but maybe it blew a paper off a desk or something. Who knows? But it's very sensitive on this beta, and hopefully it'll improve.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend installing on the second camera yet. It'll be just a bunch of more problems for you.
Right.
In terms of my HomeKit setup, I'm trying to think of what's the last thing that I bought. I don't have any like super original HomeKit accessories. Like I've seen people having like ceiling fans that are HomeKit enabled, or smoke alarms, or like sprinklers, like really original and new type of accessories. I don't have any of those. I mean, I talked about my home security system before. I don't want to repeat that story. I have an Aqara hub that I'm using with some window sensors, and I'm also using a bunch of other window and door sensors, the Eve ones, separate from the Aqara hub. So I got those two things going on at the same time. And I just saw today that one of the more popular sort of do-it-yourself, like modular home security systems, it's called the Abode system. It's like a modular type of deal that you can buy like the central hub, and you can buy motion sensors, and you can keep adding sensors to that setup. It just rolled out official HomeKit compatibility. So it's the second or maybe the third HomeKit security system that exists, and I guess the first like real modular one that is fully HomeKit enabled. The Akara hub that I have, it essentially boils down to buying this Akara hub, and Akara is like a sort of like a brand part of the Xiaomi family, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like a brand that is part of the bigger corporation. But when you use the Akara hub and you add sensors to that, you're not really buying HomeKit sensors. What the Akara hub does is it provides a bridge between Zigbee, which is another home communication protocol, and HomeKit. Just the Akara hub is HomeKit enabled. All the other sensors are actually based on Zigbee. And the Akara hub translates those Zigbee commands back to HomeKit.
That is essentially how the Philips Hue bulbs work too, because the hub is HomeKit enabled, but the bulbs are not, and they form their own kind of like mesh network, as I understand it, where they communicate one to the other. And so I'm very torn on Hue bulbs because of the layout of where I have mine located in my house, and the fact that I'm trying to use some of them outdoors, I have had issues. I think I would be better off if I had bulbs that were Wi-Fi enabled, because I have a very strong Wi-Fi network throughout those parts of the house. But the bulbs are kind of strung out in a long pattern that occasionally they think they lose their connection to each other. And as a result, I think I showed you a screenshot like not that long ago where all of my outdoor stuff was completely unresponsive, and that it happens. It comes back, but it's really irritating when you're trying to deal with the lights or get to the garage door opener or whatever, and it doesn't work. So,
yeah. Have you ever tried the LiFX lights?
I have. I tried not their bulbs, but I did try their light strip. And the light strip was nice. I didn't keep it. I gave it to one of my kids because I didn't really have a good use for it. And it works pretty well. The other lighting thing that I've used, the one that is probably one of the most rock solid HomeKit devices I've ever used, is a Lutron dimmer. And so it's actually a switch that goes in the wall, and it controls existing, non-HomeKit enabled bulbs, just regular light bulbs. And it too has a bridge that hangs off of my router, but it has been, maybe because it's hardwired into the wall and always has a nice, probably has a good antenna and a good source of power. It works reliably 100% of the time. And it's, whereas I think it controls 6 lights, and buying 6, Hue spotlight bulbs would probably be like $300, something like that. This is a lot cheaper. I don't remember exactly how much it cost, but it was roughly $100, maybe a little more, maybe a little less.
Lutron, you say?
Yeah.
Do you know if it works in Europe or if it's like one of those things that is optimized for the US?
I'm not certain. I believe it's a pretty big company, so they may have a version that works in Europe. They do one that's not that. They have ones that go on the wall like I got because I was replacing an existing light switch, but they also have ones that just kind of like stick to the wall, like you can do with, I think Hue has these too, where they're independent of your electrical system in your home. So it works.
That's nice,
right? So it's better for like an apartment situation, for instance, where you don't, your landlord isn't necessarily going to let you change the switches out and that kind of thing.
So anyway, before we move on, all of these segments started when I mentioned the Abode security system.
Right.
That's completely like HomeKit native, all of the different components.
All right.
They have an explanation they have a new landing page where you can get all the details. And it's very nice. If I didn't have an existing setup that I spent not necessarily a lot of money on, because all the components were relatively cheap, but a lot of time figuring out how to build and what to do with it, I would actually consider the Abode one, just because it's all like, it doesn't require all of the different workarounds and hacks that I had to go through.
Right.
It's all native. You basically buy the system, like the base system with the hub, buy the sensors that you want to add in a modular fashion, and then you upgrade to HomeKit, and everything is exposed in HomeKit. You don't have to go through For example, in my case, I had to deal with the Akara app, which somehow it was set in Chinese, and I needed to it's so wild. Like this app, you need to create an account, but then you need to choose on which servers you want to create the account on. Because, for example, US servers and Chinese servers don't have or at least don't have to follow GDPR. So if you create a European account, you basically cannot use the app anymore because it hasn't been updated for GDPR compliance. It's wild.
That is a little hacky.
I basically had to create a Chinese account on Chinese servers. I hope that the account information is all that they wanted, because then I deleted the app. So now the Akara hub is just communicating via HomeKit. I deleted all of the Chinese apps from my phone. So I don't think anything else is being sent to the Chinese.
Well, I think this goes to an interesting topic, which is reliability and how customized and how hacky you want to get with HomeKit, because I think I've probably gone the opposite direction of you to some degree, which is I don't like to fiddle with it as much as I used to, and I just like it to work. And usually that means picking, like you said, with the abode system, something that's more modular, integrated, and it's really why I've kind of migrated everything to HomeKit over time. I had more non-HomeKit related home automation stuff before, but then it's just a whole bunch of, dealing with apps that can kind of bridge the gap between them and that sort of thing. And over time, I've found certain devices that work particularly well. You mentioned the Eve products. I was originally very skeptical of those since they work over Bluetooth, but mine have all been perfect. I've got a backdoor sensor and a couple of electrical outlets, and they work absolutely perfectly. And another device that I like a lot is the ecobee thermostat. That has been rock solid too. So I'm trying to stick these days with mainly things that are HomeKit enabled, and if possible, don't use a bridge, because I currently have the Lutron bridge and the Hue bridge. I used to also have a Wemo bridge, because I think Wemo now makes switches, like electrical outlets and things that don't require a bridge, but for a long time they did, and I had nothing but trouble with mine. So I kind of abandoned using Wemo products and moved to the Eve ones, because I know you had recommended those to me, and they've been perfect since I got them. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Luna Display. Luna Display is the only hardware solution that turns your iPad or Mac into a wireless display. Luna sets up in just seconds and works instantly over Wi-Fi or a USB cable when Wi-Fi isn't available. And unlike Sidecar's limited 10-meter range, you can use Luna wherever your Wi-Fi can reach. It also works in 3 different modes: Mac to iPad, Mac to Mac, and headless mode. I've been using Luna Display recently in Mac to Mac mode. It's a new feature that just came out a few weeks ago, and I love it. I work primarily on a Mac Mini, and it has a Luna Display connected to it. We also happen to have a 15-inch MacBook Pro lying around the house from 2015 that nobody was really using. So I connected it with the Luna Display. It just took a matter of seconds to do, and the experience has been absolutely seamless. Luna Display works with Macs running Mac OS 10.8, which is Mountain Lion and later. So there's a whole wide variety of older Macs that you can use with Luna Display, and you should really try it because it's fantastic. I also use a separate Luna Display in headless mode for a Plex server that I have in my house on an older Mac Mini, and it's great for that too, because I can use my iPad to access the server from anywhere in my home. And of course, there's Mac to iPad mode. Luna turns your iPad into a complete extension of your Mac. With full support for external keyboards, the Apple Pencil, and touch interactions, it literally turns your Mac into a touchscreen device. Luna runs on a proprietary video technology called Liquid, and it was originally designed for the workflows of professional digital artists. And what that means is that it guarantees stunning image quality and virtually zero lag. I want to tell you about a special deal that they've got going over the U.S. Thanksgiving holiday, starting on Friday, November 29th, that's Black Friday, through Cyber Monday, which is December 2nd. You can get a Luna Display for 30% off plus free shipping. This is the biggest sale that they do all year, so don't miss out. Just go to lunardisplay.com. You don't need a promo code or anything. The discount is applied at checkout. Again, for 30% off a Lunar Display, go to lunardisplay.com between November 29th and December 2nd for 30% off and free shipping. Our thanks to the Lunar Display for their support of App Stories.
So something that you mentioned a few seconds ago, actually, John, is I want to get back to that. The idea of reliability and security with the system, because I agree with you. I don't want to have, like, having gone through this process of like having to use bridges and going through custom setups for things that require hubs, and then later you can upgrade it to HomeKit. It's something that I really don't like this process, and I don't like the idea that information may be sent elsewhere, which was also part of the reason why I upgraded to HomeKit Secure Video. Right. Because by doing that, I was able not only to save, I want to say about like over 300 euros that I was spending annually on the Canary premium service and the Logicircle Safe service. So both of those subscriptions are gone because we're going all in on secure video, which is why I'm so annoyed by with the initial bugs.
Yeah, no, I did it for the exact same reason. I've been paying Canary and I don't want to anymore since I have a bunch of available iCloud storage.
Yeah, but in addition to that, there's the fact that I like that no data is, when you upgrade to HomeKit Secure Video, the communication between the camera and Logitech servers is cut off completely.
Right.
Like the camera doesn't talk to the Logitech servers anymore. It all stays locally. It all stays on my network. And I like that. And something that I feel hasn't been discussed enough, but primarily because Apple hasn't given us enough details, and because those products haven't come out yet. HomeKit routers. These were announced at WWDC in June. It's a thing that's actually happening. The specification is part of the HomeKit framework. So I'm going to try and find a link for the show notes. Somebody on Twitter a while back was able to sort of create a fake HomeKit router accessory and see what the setup looks like. Apparently, HomeKit routers will, the main feature, in addition to sort of simplifying your Wi-Fi setup, because you can do all of it in the Home app, and you can, in theory, check what's the status of a router, if you want to install any extenders. So if you have a mesh network, you can also manage, in theory, all the satellites for the main router. That's going to be very nice. But judging from the images that I'm looking at in this setup screen, one of the core functionalities will be network security. And you will be able to go through, for each accessory that you have in your home, you will be able to say, I don't want this device to have any restriction in terms of talking to the internet and being able to communicate with an outside network.
Right.
Or there will be an automatic service, an automatic option that will basically let devices talk to approved services, as Apple calls them, via the internet. So presumably, if you want to upgrade your firmware, or if there's any other core functionality that needs to be accessed with a third-party internet provider, the accessory will be able to talk to it. Or, and this is what I'm really interested in, you can restrict, if you have a HomeKit router and you have Wi-Fi accessories part of your HomeKit setup, there will be an option called Restrict to Home. And that option says restricts accessories to making connections through your Home Hub and with other accessories, but it doesn't actually let them talk to the internet. So if you have, for example, a camera, and you want to make sure that it doesn't ever talk to an external service with an external server, and you have a HomeKit router, you will be able to go in there in the configuration page within the Home app, select the accessory and say, restrict to home. I don't ever want this accessory to talk to the internet. That will make me feel a lot better, because it means I have a HomeKit router, and it's sort of an end-to-end system where the router works in HomeKit. it applies a setting that works with all other HomeKit accessories that also talk over Wi-Fi to the router. So right now, I sort of gotta trust Apple that HomeKit Secure Video doesn't actually let the Logi Circle camera talk to Logitech servers.
Right.
But if I had a HomeKit router, I would actually be able to see the option myself and apply this setting myself and say, never talk to the internet, just talk to my home hub and to other accessories on my local network. That's very interesting to me.
Yeah, that is very interesting. You know what it reminds me of a little bit is that Netgear has a service, or they work with a service called Armor, which is powered by Bitdefender. I think Bitdefender is a third-party company. And it's something that I have an Orbi router, and I know you do too. And it's something that they offered like a 60-day free trial on. And I gave it a try, and it was interesting. What was nice about it is with the Orbi app, you can already see all the devices that are connected to your network. But what this does, it'll send you notifications when another device joins the network. So if someone's trying to connect who's near your house, trying to connect to your network, or if any of the devices are dialing out to an untrusted network of some kind. And once in a while, it would pick up some sort of ad network or something that was being accessed through a browser, for instance, and would send me notifications. I didn't keep it, but having that kind of thing, especially if it was built in at a firmware level into a router, could be really interesting. The other thing I think is worth mentioning when you talk about things like reliability is, and this is probably an area where I don't think Apple has done a great job in the past, is that there's more than just you in your household. And one of the things that's really important, I think, with HomeKit is that they be easy, and that people who don't want to get into the nitty-gritty in your household don't have to, which is why I think it's good that things like my Lutron switch has physical buttons on it. So if someone wants to press the button to turn on the lights, they can. They don't have to open up an app. Or the Ecobee thermostat, you can drag your finger on the touch screen to raise or lower the temperature. You don't have to use an app. And I think that kind of thing, at least when you're looking at it, especially if you've got other people in your household, it's worth keeping in mind so that everybody's happy and can use things the way they want to use them, not necessarily the way that you think they should be used. I know that's certainly true in my house.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I so often wish that, and I know that it's never going to happen, but there should be like some kind of getting started mode in the Home app that sort of provides you with a cheat sheet that you can share with family members. Like it generates a guide for your partner or your kids to know how to use HomeKit. Because, especially for people like us, you and me, we do this for a living. We like to fiddle. We constantly change accessories and commands, and we add new things to our setups. It would be nice to have like a feature of the Home app that with a single button creates a basic guide with a set of commands that you can share with people in your family, or like print out and have, or maybe even show on the Apple TV in the living room or something like that. I've seen people on Reddit create their own guides and like pretty PDFs with commands and tutorials on how to use the Home app. It's definitely something that I'm thinking about myself, especially because it's such a weird situation here where we live in Italy, but all of my HomePods are set to US English.
Right.
So if you come over, you need to speak in English if you want to control my lights with an assistant. Otherwise, you got to use my smart buttons or your phone. But then again, I would need an explanation for how my Eve buttons work and all the different presses. So I've been thinking, what's a good way to teach my mom how to use my Eve buttons that have 3 gestures each? Right. And it's still something that I'm trying to think about. Like, do I want to print out like a little sticker that I can stick on top of the button and that shows you like a single press does this? I don't know. It's explaining to family members how to use this stuff is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately.
Well, it's also one of those things that makes it even more frustrating when things don't work, because certainly listening to you and Steven talk about your experience with the Logitech Circle 2, I had the same experience where it's like, well, I want this to work. I think it's going to make my life easier. And then when it doesn't work, not only am I frustrated because it doesn't work properly, but now I frustrated everybody in my family who's like, why did you just break something that was already working, basically?
Yeah.
You're right. So, that makes the situation worse, I think. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Linode. With Linode, you can instantly deploy and manage an SSD server in the Linode cloud. And you can get a server up and running in just seconds with your choice of Linux distro, resources, and node location. Linode has hundreds of thousands of customers, and they're all looked after by their incredible 24/7 support team. If you ever run into any problems, just send them an email, give them a call, or chat over IRC if that's easier. Oh, and you know what? They also have super useful guides and support documentation. So if you just need to look something up quickly, you absolutely can. And their new management panel is in beta at cloud.linode.com. This new management console is a single-page application built using the cutting-edge React.js stack and is backed entirely by their public API. And guess what? It's also open source. Plus, they feature two-factor authentication to keep all of your data safe and secure. We use Linode at Mac Stories and absolutely love it. Not only is it easy to use and completely reliable, but the prices are really great too. Linode has pricing options to suit everybody's needs. Their plans start at 1 gigabyte of RAM for just $5 a month, and they offer high memory plans starting with 16 gigabytes of RAM. And Linode have a special offer just for you. As a listener of this show, you can go to linode.com/appstories and use the promo code AppStories2019 to get $20 towards any Linode plan. On the 1 gigabyte of RAM plan, that's 4 free months. And with a 7-day money-back guarantee, you have nothing to lose. Give Linode a try today. That's linode.com/appstories and the promo code AppStories2019. To learn more, sign up, and make the most of that $20 credit. Our thanks to Linode for their support of the show. We should probably talk about apps.
Yes.
Tell me what you've been using, because I want to kick it off with one. I'm going to jump into one of the ones that I know that you listed for automation. And if you're using HomeKit, I think it's a great choice to try Pushcut, because Pushcut, when this is published, I'll have already answered the question in the club newsletter, but we got a question from someone recently who's like, how can I have a text message sent to myself when my motion sensor detects motion in my house? And you can't do that with the Home app. There's no messages integration because it's a limited subset of things. But with Pushcut, you can have a push notification sent to yourself because it's an app that is designed to integrate with shortcuts and send push notifications, and they can be interactive push notifications. And I love it because it has, not only does it work with shortcuts, but it has a web API. And so you get a URL that you can just plug into a HomeKit automation in the Home app, and it will fire off that push notification whenever whatever your triggers are triggered. And so I just set one up myself the other day that when there's motion outside the back door, I get a push notification. So I know like when my son comes home from school, that kind of thing. So Pushcut, I think, is a handy app to have in your back pocket if you're trying to do automation with HomeKit.
Yeah, Pushcut is really, really good. At first, I struggled to understand what it was all about. The idea of having programmable push notifications isn't necessarily new. There's other services. One of them I've been using for years now, Pushover.
Right.
It basically gives you a URL that you can use and connect to services like Zapier or IFTTT. And you can use the URL as a webhook, basically. So when something happens, call up this URL, and the URL transmits a push notification back to your iOS device. What's unique about Pushcut is that the creation process of these notifications is entirely done on iOS. And there's the Pushcut app lets you design your own rich notifications. This is the big advantage over Pushover, Pushbullet, and other similar services.
Right.
You can actually take advantage of all the notifications APIs that are available for iOS developers, but in a visual environment. You can design your own notification, sort of like if it was like a WYSIWYG editor, and you can have, for example, multiple actions associated to a rich notification. You can have a title, a subtitle. You can even choose to make a notification like permanent or temporary. You can control all kinds of aspects related to actions. And the best part, which is absolutely my favorite feature, actions can be literally anything. You can have actions that when you tap it, you launch a shortcut, or you launch any link in Safari, or even better, you can run a HomeKit scene from a pushcut notification action. So in my case, for example, I have notifications set up for my Dyson heater. When the temperature reaches a certain level, it sends me a push notification. And this automation was set up using Pushcut and Home Plus 4, which is another HomeKit app that I use a lot because it exposes native HomeKit features that Apple itself is not using in its own home app. And when I set up this notification with Pushcut so that when my temperature reaches like 25 degrees Celsius, the notification has actions to turn off the Dyson, switch to cooling mode, or even keep heating the house. And all of these actions are 3 separate buttons in a notification, and they just run completely in the background. I just need to tap it, and they run a HomeKit scene. They don't need to launch the home app. They don't need to launch shortcuts. They just execute, which is awesome. And this is what makes Pushcut unique, is that you can design your own rich notification on iOS in a visual environment, and you have full control over actions.
Right. And by having those multiple button options like that, it essentially gives you conditional control. So as you said, once the temperature hits 25 Celsius, you can do this, that, or this third thing. It doesn't, it doesn't have to be just one action if this condition is met, and another if another one is met. They can all be incorporated into the same push notification, which makes it a really powerful app.
I also want to mention one of my favorite additions to my HomeKit setup lately, and that's HomeRun on the Apple Watch.
Oh, yeah.
HomeRun has been around for a while. We wrote about it on Mac Stories multiple times. It's made by Aaron Pierce. He makes all kinds of great HomeKit utilities. He makes HomeCam, which is a third-party HomeKit camera viewer. He makes HomePass, which is used to store your HomeKit setup codes. But my favorite is HomeRun. HomeRun is basically what I would like Apple to do with HomeKit on the watch, but it was made by a third-party developer. HomeRun is a simple app that you can configure on your iPhone, but you actually use it on the watch. On your iPhone, you configure the layout. You can create a grid-based layout where each button runs a HomeKit scene. And what makes it unique is that you have full control over the grid. You can make buttons bigger or smaller. You can choose colors, and you can choose from thousands of icons. The app lets you use any emoji or even thousands of icons from a very large glyph set. And so I shared an image with you, John, and it's going to be in the show notes. This is my current HomeRun setup. You can see at the top, I have 3 different bed icons. Those are 3 different light colors for our bedroom: purple, blue, and red. Right below that, you can see the red playlist button. That one runs a HomeKit scene that takes advantage of the new AirPlay automations in iOS 13.2 to make the lights red in the bedroom and shuffle one of our favorite playlists on the HomePod and the Sonos, which I recently added to my bedroom. Shuffles a playlist just with one tap all at once. The one next to it is a similar concept, but it's for a different playlist for a different room of the house. It makes the kitchen light blue, and it shuffles my best of 2019 playlist on the kitchen HomePod. Yeah, it's got the calendar.
That's why it has the calendar. I thought it was like it was for like the calendar app or something.
No, it's got the calendar icon because it's my best of the year playlist.
Got it.
The big yellow light bulb button, that's one of my most used ones. That turns all the lights of the house white and to 100% brightness. It's a very easy way to make sure that everything is on. If I need to walk across multiple rooms and whatnot. The fourth row is my Dyson row. So I have cooling mode, heating mode, and turn off the Dyson, which is the last one with the plug.
Okay.
And you can barely see the edge of the final button. That one is available by scrolling with the digital crown.
Right.
That's my shutdown scene that turns all the lights off. Yeah.
No, that's great. I like HomeRun a lot too.
Yeah, it's on my watch face. It's got the complication right there. It's big. I honestly believe HomeRun is my primary HomeKit interaction system these days.
Yeah, no, it is good. And I fell out of using it for a while, and that's something that I've been meaning to set up. I do use it for things like opening and closing my garage door, because I have HomeKit enabled garage door openers, which is really nice to have. I enjoy having that a lot. And if Apple's listening, I would really like to be able to override the security feature that doesn't allow you to use Hey You Know Who to open it. I'd love to be able to do that as I'm walking out the door to my HomePod. Instead, I can do it with my watch, but it would be nice if I could do it with my phone or my HomePod or whatever. But in any event, yes, I use HomeRun for that, and I also use it for like my bedside lamp and a couple other things. But now that I've changed things up a little bit and added some new devices in the last couple of months, I'd like to rethink what that grid looks like and maybe shuffle it around a little bit. This episode of App Stories is brought to you by Moo. Moo is an online print and design company specializing in customizable business cards, postcards, stickers, and more for your business. And if you're new to Moo, you can order a free sample pack on their website, moo.com, so you can see what their products look like and hold them in your hands. They offer a full suite of products, including business cards, postcards, invitations, letterhead, stickers, flyers, and more, so you can seamlessly promote yourself and your brand. And you can count on Moo's quality. They have special finishes like gold foil and a brand new silver foil. They also have raised spot gloss and letterpress. And it's all these little touches that make you stand out. And if you don't fancy designing your own card, Moo recently rolled out new templates for business cards, which are inspired by their very most creative customers. And their luxurious hardcover notebooks feature a Swiss binding so every page lays flat. And they're made with premium paper that is protected by a tough tactile cover. I've been using Moo business cards for a really long time. I love the ones with the rounded corners and the soft matte finish. I use them for Mac stories, and they always impress people when I hand them out. So go on over to moo.com and use the promo code PRINTMOO to get 15% off orders of $50 or more. Again, that URL is moo.com and the code PRINTMOO for 15% off any order of $50 or more. Our thanks to Moo for their support of App Stories.
All right, so two final things. I wanted to also share with you the image of my custom shortcut called Home. This is a shortcut that I've added to my iPhone and iPad home screen, and it's a very simple shortcut. It's a menu. It's based on a choose from menu action, and each option of this menu runs a different HomeKit scene. So this was all set up manually. Of course, I went in to pick the correct emoji for each option. You can see, for example, orange bedroom as an actual orange icon, which I thought that was very funny. And each option runs a scene using the Control My Home action, which is also new in iOS 13. Okay. I've added this shortcut to my home screen using the Mac Stories shortcuts icons, and it's a quick way for me to control HomeKit while I'm working, especially on the iPad. I can just tap the icon. I don't need to pick up my phone. I don't need to talk to Siri. I don't need to look at my watch. I can just tap on the icon and run the shortcut. Finally, I want to clarify Home+4, what I mean by exposing HomeKit features that Apple doesn't use. There's some advanced HomeKit parameters, such as, for example, being able to run automations when the temperature reaches a certain level or is below a certain threshold. those are native HomeKit options. Like they are actually available in the HomeKit framework for any developer to plug into. The problem is Apple itself doesn't use it. In the Home app,
Right.
it is impossible to set up automations for things like fans or heaters based on temperature levels. There's no option at all to do that. But if you use a third-party HomeKit app like Home Plus 4, those options will be available to you. And even like what's even more, in a weird way, fascinating about this is that once you set up these native, again, I want to stress that these are native HomeKit-based automations. Once you set them up in Home Plus 4, they will show up and they will work in Apple's Home app. You just cannot create them there. You need to create them in a third-party app, and then they will show up in the Apple Home app, and they will work with your HomeKit hub and all of your different devices.
Right.
Very strange that Apple still hasn't fixed this problem. I originally covered it in my iOS 11 review in 2017.
Wow.
It's still the case today.
Yeah, that's amazing to me. I mean, and that's one of the big advantages of using Home Plus 4. It's to have access to that kind of thing. But it's a real shame that you can't do it from the main Home app. Well, Federico, I think that is probably a great place to stop for this week. We will be back, of course, next week, and I want to thank our sponsors for this episode. That's Lunar Display, Linode, and Moo. Of course, you can find me and Federico over at macstories.net. Federico is also on Twitter and Instagram. He's at Viticci, that's VITICCI, and I am at John Voorhees, JOHN VOORHWS. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.